Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet an island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
All right, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Manny Noak, executive business consultant, author of over a dozen books, and professional speaker to business organizations all over the country, and the host of the podcast, Targeted Lead Generation. The coach, as many people call him, has helped dozens of companies to move from doing well to doing extraordinary. The central theme of his message is that we learn to be great leaders from the failures we have gone through, reviewed, and understood and learned from. By learning from our failures, we can maximize our potential. By learning from our failures, we can take control of our fear and move forward. Manny's committed to the development of outstanding leaders throughout the world. And what makes Manny, Coach Manny, a little bit different is, simply put, he has done it. I'll emphasize a couple things in Manny's bio there. One, there's many coaches out there, but how many have actually done it? So I love that last one. And I also truly believe we learn the most from our failures as well. So Coach Manny Noak, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Deepak.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, absolutely. As am I. So I would like to start off with asking somewhat the same question to all my guests is, when we're growing up and, we're like, if we want to be a fireman or a policeman or astronaut, doctor, whatever the case may be, business consultant doesn't usually come up. So how did you fall into this, or where you're at today?
I actually did fall into this, believe it or not, just because I was in the sales process. I was in software development for years, and I ran teams, I coached people. People just naturally came to me. I don't know why. And I started helping them both in their personal and business lives. After 9/11, the company I was helping fell apart, and I went into coaching full time at that point, just because it was new. I was actually started doing consulting, and then I got into this organization. I'm trying to find their book. They were really into masterminds. So they taught me about masterminds, how to sell masterminds. It was a franchise that a friend of mine owned. And I enjoyed the group coaching, but I liked the one-on-one stuff better. And everything took off from there. So I've been doing it close to 20 years now.
Yeah, you're one of the OGs, I guess, in this space. 20 years, that's a long time. So what do you based on what I said in the bio and kind of a little bit of communication we had before we started recording, what do you believe are the keys to success?
Okay, so there's a lot of keys to success, and I've written some books, and a lot of people have written books. I think one of the most important things to success is finding a mentor, someone who has done what you want to do and who is willing to help you and teach you what you need to do to get there. I know that in my personal life and in my business life, that the greatest jumps in my career have been when I had a great mentor. And when I didn't, it didn't work out that way. Also, you have to be willing to fail. And I think we talked about that. You have to be willing to stick yourself out there. I had a great mentor when I was in my 20s who used to give me a hard time about not making a decision. Never gave me a hard time about making the wrong decisions, but just he said to me, Manny, why don't you just make a decision? We can't do it. Nobody else can do it. So he taught me the essence that failure is okay. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission, which became popular, but this was long before that. So you have to be willing to fail. And I think the third key that I put out there is you have to be really focused. Too many times we do too many things, and especially as entrepreneurs, every time we see something that's interesting, we want to go there and we want to get involved, and I want to try that. And coaching those guys and gals is even worse than doing it, because that is what happens. But when you stay focused, that you can just produce so much more.
I love all those three things, and I'll just I'll just add a little commentary. So, when I worked corporately, they weren't mentors per se, but the bosses I liked and respected the most is where I had the greatest growth in my career. And now, as an entrepreneur myself for the last number of years, it wasn't until I found and I worked with a number of people, but sometimes you have to trial and error. But what my current coach, mentor, and friend, once I met him, that's when I really saw, the takeoff in my own business in this last year. So I totally believe that. Focus as well, although yes, the shiny object syndrome, that actually recently, when we're the time of this recording, this just kind of came up to me about in the last week or so about people. And I have a couple books in me, but they're just like, let's do it. I'm like, no, I got this. I just started this podcast. I'm doing a health summit later in the year. Like, I'd love to do it, but I got to get a couple other things done. So like, there's that fine balance there for sure. Yeah, so I totally agree with those. And I kind of just touched upon in a second about leaders that I had in the corporate role, but let's talk a little bit more broadly. What do you think are the skills that make a great leader? Could be corporately, entrepreneur, what have you.
Well, I think there's a lot of skills that make a great leaders, but from the stuff that I've written and researched and worked over the years, I think listening is probably one of the greatest skills that any leader has. Just being able, not just to hear, but to listen to more than just the words, the body, the behavior, and all that. Just take in what's happened so you can really make a decision based on what's really going on. I tell people today, and I teach them that humbleness is the number one trait that I've found in leaders, no matter where I go. You have to be able to admit, hey, it's my fault. You have to be able to take the blame. And that's where humbleness comes in. When the whole thing falls apart, it's my fault. When something I'm responsible for, it's my fault. And we as entrepreneurs don't like to do that too much. Okay, we like to move on and go on to something else. And high energy is another thing that I think is critically important as a leader. And people follow you and they watch you. And I actually learned more of this from my children than anything else, is they imitate you, and so do they in the corporate world. When you're a leader,
absolutely,
if you are strong, if you are straight, if you are honest, if you push forward, people that work for you tend to become just like you. So that's critical. Jack Welch probably said it better than anybody else in the business. Great leaders build great leaders. And he was probably one of the best at doing that. So it's more than just you're a great leader. It's how many great leaders have spawned from you into other organizations. How many great leaders are there out there who have worked for you? I think that's just so important.
Yeah, Manny, there were so many great points there. I just want to tell a little story that I've never shared before, certainly not on this podcast. When I was first graduated, again, I was a CPA in my first career. So I first graduated business school and got my first real job in the real world. I remember my boss, who was already a CPA, he basically had the philosophy, he kind of sat me down the first month or couple months and saying, look, I was kind of like, what should I do? Should I get my should I go get an MBA, get some years just work? Should I get my CPA? Like I was like, kind of advice. And he's like, look, go get your CPA. He's like, it's my job to train you up and prepare you so you can take my job. Like I'm confident enough in my skills, I can go find a job anywhere. And if they decide they want you instead of me to be this role, that's fine, but it's my job to develop you. And that stuck with me as like, being fresh out of school, first real job, corporate job, that really stuck with me. So I think I wholeheartedly believe that, as a role of a leader, whether you're a corporate world, entrepreneur, in your family, not for profit, whatever. If you're in a leadership position of any kind, that's what one of your main focuses should be.
And so many people are afraid of that. So many people that I encounter are afraid of for their job. And that's how you can really tell the people who are going to move forward and those that aren't. If you're worried about it, you're probably never going to be a great leader.
I would second that.
And I want people to take, just like you were saying, that same story that I tell out there. I want you to take my job so I can go on and do something else.
Absolutely. So, Manny, what do you think's been? I know you kind of we highlighted it a bit at the beginning and in the bio, but like, what do you think's been? What's made you successful? And you can define success however you want, but what has made you successful?
Being surrounded by the right people, I think, more than anything else. That's one of the principles we teach all the time in mastermind groups, is you got to hang out with people who are smarter, better, sharper than you. If you don't, you have nowhere to improve. And my key, as I stated in the beginning, was I had somebody, whether it was in a mastermind group or whether it was a boss or a mentor, who I could look up to and say, that's who I want to be when I get to the next step in my career. And if they were willing to pitch in, help you, and help you move forward, it was even more valuable.
Yeah, we've all heard that term, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most, and that sort of thing. That could be any, and certainly we all belong to different communities. We're running our business, we're in a business, we're in our homes, whatever. So of course, in some of those instances, we are the leader. We are the people want to be like us, and others, we aspire to be like them. So I totally recognize the different situations people find themselves, but honestly, it's like, if I can be the dumbest one in the group, like that's awesome, because that means I only have somewhere I only to go up, right? So you brought up masterminds a couple times now. So, and I understand what that means, but maybe some of the audience might not expect this, but we have a very diverse audience. So
okay,
some of those people wouldn't necessarily know what that means. So maybe if you could just explain what masterminds are really briefly, and then like how they could be a vehicle for success potentially for people.
Okay, great. The thing is, mastermind terms kind of been abused and used all over the place. So you're right. Some people believe that you can put 100, 200 people in a room and call it a mastermind. Other people don't believe that. Like, I don't believe that. I think most effective mastermind groups, and it came from one of the old guys who was around forever. I can't remember the name right now, but is a group of, I usually say somewhere between 6 and 10 people who get together at least once a month and sit around a table, and they each talk about one issue that they're dealing with or they've dealt with, and then the group gives input into how they could handle that problem. Then the group gives them accountability that when they come back the next month, they need to tell the group, this is how I did what you gave me. So you have to be able to not just give advice, very hard for many of us, you have to be able to take advice as well. So that's the essence. So you go around the room, a lot of times the best masterminds are peers. And it's usually in businesses that are different than yours. I usually do business owners. So if you take 6 to 10 business owners in different businesses, now you have a lot of power, because when I explain a problem to you, I'll explain how I deal with it in the coaching business. You may be in the logistics business and you may look at it totally different, or you guys may already have done it differently, or you may be in the automobile business, or just something. A lot of times the cross industry stuff is amazing. You may be in the medical business and you may say, well, we do it this way. Have you ever tried this? So, and the point that you get that peer-to-peer thing. So for all business owners, I have a lot of respect for the people that are sitting around the table because it's not an advisor, it's not a consultant, it's not my boss, it's somebody who does what I do each and every day. And so I have a lot of respect. I also have a lot of fear of coming back and not having taken the advice or done what I said I would do. The accountability is just amazing. I've run a lot of these groups. One group I ran for 10 years and all the businesses just went through the roof. But people come in and people go out because I'm in there now, but I don't share the way I need to, or I'm not willing to take advice, or I don't give advice. Well, then you kind of have to remove those type of people, because people need to share and they need to take advice. That's what the group's all about.
Yeah, I love that. I want to just highlight a couple of points, just going back a couple of minutes to what Manny said.
Sure.
Again, if you're showing up to a room of 100, 200 people and the trainer, facilitator, coach, whatever's at the room and teaching you, that's no longer, they can call it a mastermind. I have the same feeling with you, Manny. I don't think that's a mastermind at all. I like the small group, no more than 12. You say 10, somewhere in that ballpark. The other point I want to just mention, if I could use another anecdote, when I was doing my CPA, it wasn't the learning about the debits and the credits and the tax and this and blah, blah, blah. It was when we had a group discussion in our little cohorts that they, put us together across different industries. And I mean, just so happened to be a few people in the same industries. But, other different industries, like, oh, I have no idea that's a challenge. I don't even know anything about that industry. And just to see how they relate to these topics we were trying to learn at the time in relation to their industry and how that contrasted to the industry I was working. I was like, I found that to be like probably the best part of that whole program. I'm trying to get my CPAs is that small group discussion that's, again, facilitated, not being coached. So I really appreciate that you said that. We kind of talked about this. I asked you earlier about this, the skills of a great leader, but what do you think are the skills that anyone can implement, just success and whatever success looks like for that person?
What does it look like for that person?
Let me refine the question.
Yeah, repeat.
What are some of the skills that can lead people to success, whatever that might mean for them?
Oh, okay. What are the skills that can lead them there? Well, somebody taught me a long time ago, and a lot of people continue to teach me. Nobody in the room can outwork me. All right. No one in this room. You might be smarter, you might be sharper, you may have more connections, you might have more education, but I will outwork anybody in the room. And if you take that attitude, no matter where you go, you will always shine as the star. When I was coming up, I was always in the room with people who were older than me. So if you're looking around the room, that's not the case anymore. But when I was young, if you look around the room and everybody's younger than you, you might be in the wrong room too. You need to be excelling in what you do, and people need to take notice, so they bring you into the meetings. Part of that's hard work. Part of that's doing whatever you need to do when told by your boss. That's kind of an old-fashioned thing, but today, everybody wants to question everything that goes on. And you're not going to get a lot of exposure that way, because if I have you, and every time I tell you, I need you to help me do this, you just go do it and it's done and I don't have to worry about it. And then I have this other guy over here who every time I have to have 20-minute discussion with, then I'm going to come to you more and I'm going to help you more. So it's all, I guess the key is, if you're young, build relationships. I wrote a book and I did a lot of teaching on building relationships. And I was just doing some teaching this morning to some people about that's still the most important thing. We can criticize it whatever we want, but it's still not about what you know, it's about who you know. And as an entrepreneur and as a salesperson for many years, it was always building a relationship and being able to pick up the phone when I needed some sales, being able to pick up the phone when I needed a favor and get that information. So the biggest advice to become a great leader is get to know everybody, spend some time, ask questions. That's how you get to know people. Ask a lot of questions and sit back and listen and take the information in.
Absolutely. Manny, I want to take it this way. So you use that theoretical example of, you asked me to do something, I go do it. You ask somebody else and you have a discussion. Let me take it another notch, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. So let's use the same example. So you asked me to do it and I do it, and then I do something else that you didn't ask me to because I know it needs to be done. So that's one variation. I do a little bit extra, right? More than what you're required. And then I'll put the twist, and you can answer it in one or maybe in two ways. But what about if like you ask me to do something, I do it, and then I come back, it's like, hey, Manny, I did that. I did this other thing, but hey, by the way, I think there might be a better way. Maybe it doesn't take me 20 minutes to do it anymore. I think we could do it in 10, and then I can do something else that's maybe more valuable and have that discussion. So again, it's that pushback, but you still got the work done. So I'd love to get your sort of take on that at the same time.
I love that pushback. Okay. That means that you used your innovativeness to take a look at the situation. You did what needed to be done. And then you said, how can I do this better? And I think that's something I talk a lot about, reflection. And I think that's one piece that we miss a lot of times. We put together our schedule. This is what I'm going to do this week. And then we write notes all week of what we do. But few people reflect on what they did. I always reflect at the end of the day and at the end of the week. I go back through and I say what I do, because that's how you learn. So that tells me that somebody, not just did they accomplish the task, not just did they do more, they also said, is there a better way to do this? Is there something way I can help my boss to get better? But they did what needed to be done. So the reflection thing is just, I actually got it from John Maxwell. I mean, he did a lot of teaching on reflection. I'm a big Maxwell guy. On reflection, it's like every day, every week, every month, every quarter, even we do it, and yearly. What did you accomplish? Because it makes you feel like you know that you did something, and it also makes you think, could I do this better? Are there some other things that I could do to improve? So I think that's a great skill that if you come back to me and tell me that.
Yeah, one thing maybe for some of the younger audience that might be listening to this.
Yeah.
Back when I was doing corporate, I was a hiring manager, and I would always get a lot of new grads, summer students, kind of had a mix. I'd have a really young staff, half of them, and then the other half would be kind of, let's call them lifers, like they've been doing this for 20 years and they're not moving anywhere type of thing. But always the people that got noticed in my department and then moved on, promoted to other departments to do bigger and better things, were always, you got to be bright and all that stuff, of course, but you got to do the work. But all the ones who always like, why are we doing it this way? And if it's, well, you explain. I always found that when people ask those type of questions, not only did it make me and my team, my leadership team, have to think like, why are we doing this way? But it just showed that, that curiosity of like, well, how could I make this better? Even if they never came up with anything, just the fact that they're like, oh, okay. It's like, well, hey, like my friend works at this other company and he mentioned this. Is this something we do here? Just having that kind of dialogue is like, this person's got their head on right. And then when the time comes, it's like, hey, Deepak, who's the star in your group that would want to move to another department to get some different exposure because they might be a future leader type of thing? It's always those people who get their name put forward.
And that's why I encourage a lot of my clients to use interns.
Yeah,
a lot, because I've found that when you bring an intern in for a 6-week assignment. I always encourage them to pay interns.
Yeah, for sure.
But but when you bring in the intern, they're looking at everything without a history, because when you work for a long time, you have a way of doing things. They have no history. They have fresh minds. They just got all this education. And what they do now is they say, well, what about this? Or why can't we do this? And if they're sharp, they'll question a lot of stuff because they might be a little fearful, but if they're not that fearful, they're even more valuable. And the clients have ended up hiring a lot of those interns because they came in with that skill. So I think that's really important.
I love the part that you use that fearful part. They have no fear to ask the questions. I'm just going to go back to the same example just because it just stuck in my head. Same scenario when I was working corporate hiring manager. I had this one fellow. We became friends afterwards, and he was maybe a couple years older, but he had no problems. It's like rarely when the president or CEO would be like on the accounting floor or the finance floor. He's like, "Oh, how's it going?" It's like, I was reading the annual report and I'm just wondering why, like that type of thing. And it's like, "Oh, who's this guy? Who's this guy? He's pretty smart." And then when the time comes, like, "What's with this?" I won't mention his name, but like, "What's with this guy?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's a bright cookie. He's one of our stars." "Oh, he is? Okay, great. Yeah, because we heard some stuff about him." Guess what, Deepak? We're moving him. We're promoting him out of your group. It's like, "No, he's one of my stars." No, he's gone. So I think having a healthy sense of curiosity, use the word fear or no fear. I think that's helpful, especially for young. I think across the board, but definitely if you're young and starting your career, I think that's even maybe more important.
Yeah, and just that no fear. I always got in trouble. Okay, now I can tell you, you still have to have respect.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
doesn't mean you're disrespectful, but I always got in trouble for. I just look at stuff and say, just like we were talking about earlier, well, what if we did this and this? And I was in the software development field for a lot of years. And that's like what really propelled me in that business was the ability to look at stuff and say, well, what if we tried a couple different things? And in sales, you're always told you got to ask the questions. You can't hesitate. So sales is a great way. People today don't really, and nobody wants to be a salesperson, I understand, but sales is a great way to build your confidence and not be afraid to ask questions, to talk to people, to build relationships. Like when I'm coaching people to build relationships, I say, let's try something real simple. If you're standing at the store in a line, you start a conversation with somebody who's in the line. Try it. You don't know that person. You'll never see them probably again, but it'll teach you how to ask questions and start conversation.
Manny, I love that. And you don't know this about me because we don't know each other well. I've for more than a dozen years, 15 years or something, I've mentored an undergraduate student at my alma mater. And quite often, not all the time, but quite often I'll get, they're in their second year or maybe their junior year, and they're very shy. And they're trying to get, of course, in the workforce and everything, but they just want to overcome the shyness. And that is one exact tip. I said, hey, just talk to if you're in line and you notice the person in front of you's got like really cool shoes or a cool handbag or whatever the case may be, just like, oh, hey, I like your handbag, and just start it just as a tiny little thing to break out of your shell, because I'm trying to prepare them for interview processes, for their job and life on. So that's funny that you brought that up. I use that all the time as well. So
it works so well.
So Manny, this is again, not a health specific podcast, but that is my background in health. So I love to always ask my guests a couple kind of questions on with maybe a health angle. So what does your morning routine or like your daily sort of health habits, what does that look like for you?
Okay. I'm an early riser. I love to get up early. And the first 15, 20 minutes I do yoga.
Awesome.
Because I found yoga about 15, 20 years ago. And I just think it's the greatest. thing to pump up. Then I'll do some calisthenics. I may do push-ups, sit-ups, just, and I can't get up without doing that. I have to do that every morning. It's just become part of my routine. And I used to walk in the morning, but a lot of times I'm out earlier than I need to be. So I'll walk sometime in the afternoon, or if I'm at a client site, I love to take a client for a walking meeting.
Love that.
You know, leave your phones here. Let's go take a walk. And we have a discussion while we're walking. So, but I try to walk 2 to 3 miles every day as part of my health.
Awesome. So again, kind of putting the health angle on this question, if you could go back and give your 20-year-old self or some earlier period of yourself some advice or a tip regarding health, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to run as much as I could because I love running. I don't run anymore, but I would tell myself to eat better and to always make time for exercise, no matter how busy you get. Somebody taught me years ago, get up a half an hour early, then another half an hour early until you get to the point where you can get done what you need to get done in the day. So I'm usually up 5:30 every day.
Awesome. I love that. And
So,
I can't emphasize self-care as being so important to get. This is my take on it. And, you know, when I share this with my clients as well, is like, if you're not in the best place yourself, you need to take your own self-care seriously, because if you're not the best for yourself, you can't be the best husband, father, business owner, boss, et cetera, type of thing. So that's kind of, so sounds like we kind of have the same philosophy in that regard.
yeah, that's why I remember earlier I was talking about the energy being so critical to your success. For me, I'm always moving. I'm trying to be the fastest guy in the room because people pay attention when you're moving all the time, or you're fast and you're high energy. Nothing worse than people doing nothing in a room. So.
No, absolutely.
And to
Manny,
do that, you have to stay healthy, of course.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Manny, you have, I think, a gift for the listeners, a free lesson of your double your sales process, or can you just high level what that gift is?
Yeah, we have a program called Double Your Sales, which is a course that people can take that's been developed over the years to teach you how to go from where you're at and to increase your sales tremendously. And one of the things we give out is the first lesson of that process for free. And also, if they want to spend a few minutes after that lesson talking to me, I'm always open to do that.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Manny's going to give you a personal call after you finish the first lesson, which is that's no small thing. So definitely take advantage of that. And we'll have the link to that free first lesson in the show notes and in the description, etc. So very generous, Manny. Thank you for offering that to the listeners. Any last words of wisdom or a golden nugget? I mean, you dropped already a lot, but another one before we sign off for today.
Just give yourself totally to what you want to accomplish. All right. I mean, get into the game. I'm in coaching. I read, I study, I do everything I can when it relates to coaching. So if you're like you were in accounting when you were in accounting, and I'm an accounting major too, believe me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I learned everything I could about accounting. And so get into what you're doing. The last one tip I'll say, read. I guess that's the most important thing I find. And I try to read a book every week. Not the big ones, but little books. And I tell people the ability to compare what somebody tells you with what's going on in your world today makes you a much smarter person. and better person.
I love that, and I'm going to just riff on that a little bit. So much like you, Manny, not a book a week, but I try and read 2 books a month. So the last couple of years, 24 or so books a year. I also like diverse things. I mean, I just follow my interests. Of course, I read the latest in health and sciences. That's my business. I'm also interested in real estate and business and marketing. Also all biographies, great leader. You name it. There's not many genres that I don't read. I don't read like science fiction and fantasy. That's what movies are for me. But try and read diverse things. And to your last point there, you said, I'd love to get your take on this. I think again, if you're studying like one side, also I'll just speak for myself. Let's call it the broader sense of health and wellness. I like to listen to a bunch of different people because they're all going to have a little bit of a different take on the same topic. And then I think you as the individual can say, okay, well, person A said this, person B has a slightly different take, person C is a little bit even further, and person D is kind of somewhere in between these two. And then we can formulate a better response for our own lives, our own clients, et cetera, based on diverse thought patterns on the same topic. So I find that very beneficial. I'd love to get your take on that.
I do too. And I think that podcasts are one of the greatest things that I've found. I listen to podcasts all the time when I'm in the car. I'm in the car a lot more than I probably want to be, but I just to listen to different views from different people, and there are so many. I can't even listen to all the podcasts I would like to listen to. I was doing a lot of work in nurse staffing since the pandemic, nurse staffing companies. And so I got into one of their big associations, ANOL, and they have a podcast, and you can listen to people in that business. And I'm not a medical person; that's not my business. But wow, just like you said, the diverse ideas and information out there makes you better able when you're put in a situation where you got to make a decision, or you have to decide the strategy, or you have to work with people that you've never worked with before to try to find an answer. You have so much to reference back to.
Absolutely. I think also when you listen to, whether it be books or listen to podcasts, I'm also a big podcast person. When I'm working out, when I'm in the car alone without my kids, I'll listen to top 40 music or whatever, going for walks by myself or whatever. I always listen to podcasts. It's such a great way to accumulate knowledge. So I love that. But I also find that sometimes when you listen to something that's maybe not your zone of genius per se, but they bring up something, you're like, how could I apply that to what I'm doing? It might be a totally different field, totally different situation, but is there some nugget there? It's like, how can I apply that to my field? Is it even possible? And it starts the kind of the thought process, which I find very fascinating as well. Maybe last question. What's your thoughts on that?
That's so true, and I think it was proven. I remember one of the stories with big hospital trying to figure out how to better serve their clientele. And so what happened is, instead of hiring a medical person to run the company, they hired somebody out of the hospitality hotel industry to run the hospital and change the way the hospital operates.
Yeah, that's
from a hospitality. That's why today you go in a hospital, they have a menu. In a lot of hospitals, you can order food. It's because what they found was, what do people remember most about being in the hospital? A lot of times it's the food they got. And so that was a really good, I think it was Henry Ford out in Detroit did the experiment, and it was pretty amazing. So yeah, other fields, I always encourage people, hire some people outside your normal business and bring in some skills. And medical has a hard time doing that. I know if you don't have experience in that field, but I say, and I work with them, and I say, let's bring somebody in from another industry, because I think it'll benefit everybody in there as well as the company as a whole.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great point. So I'm just gonna underline it. Here's, read more books, listen to podcasts, diverse topics. I'll put that as a segue. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm joking aside, but yeah, I think it's such a knowledge accumulation. I think is so important to better ourselves, whether that be our own business, rising the corporate ladder, whatever the case may be. And podcast, books, or one of many ways, but I think they're super valuable, as both me and Manny have explained here. So Manny, I want to thank you for being on the show today. It's been fantastic having this conversation with you. And yeah, I guess I already asked for the last nugget for everyone. So yeah, thank you again. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to throw it back to Jxxiii, who's going to put us out with some music. And thank you again for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Remember, it's exceptional results for the exceptional you. Till next time.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company.
What you